Let's focus on buildings to really fight climate change. My name is Elgie. Since 2011, when the Green Preservation Lab did their monumental study comparing the climate and environmental impacts of retrofitting an existing building versus replacing it with an energy efficient building, we've known that it was better for the environment and the climate to retrofit. True, the new LEED or passive house building emitted less greenhouse gases than the older retrofitted building. But when you considered all the emissions that occurred when you mined the iron ore, smelted it, turned it into bars or sheets, shipped them across the country, or more likely across the ocean, the climate impact was so great, it would take 20 to 80 years before the new building's greater operating efficiency would make up for all those greenhouse gases emitted during its construction. Globally, buildings and construction contribute 39% of all carbon emissions. Buildings are a major source of greenhouse gases, but most municipalities are doing virtually nothing to change this. So we need programs and policies which encourage energy conservation work on existing buildings. We need programs and policies which encourage repairs and ones which prohibit climate harmful demolition. We can look to Europe for examples. Italy has been giving tax incentives for energy efficient improvements since 2007, and just last year introduced a phenomenal program which literally pays you to retrofit your home. You actually get 110% of the costs back, which you can take as an income tax reduction or a line of credit at your bank or a bonus to your contractor. France, too, offers incentives, huge incentives to retrofit. A 50 to 100% reduction in property taxes for 5 years. And they also have grants for energy conservation work. And here's something I like. These grants peg the amount of money to the amount of energy savings, not the amount of money you spend. On the other hand, Canada's Greener Homes Grant has been criticized for being so small that only well-to-do homeowners are likely to undertake the significant retrofits that are needed to seriously reduce Canada's building emissions. And it doesn't even allow you to get reimbursed for hiring someone to repair your wooden windows. It only subsidizes replacement windows. Now, when you consider all the emissions that go into manufacturing replacement windows and doors and then throwing them into landfill when they stop functioning 15 or 25 years later, we're probably worse off climate-wise installing these. Ontario has currently only one program that might possibly be about reducing greenhouse gases, but it's a very small incentive, just $5,000 subsidy, and some very expensive upgrades. And worst of all, it encourages people to stick with fossil fuels instead of moving to green energy sources. So we don't currently have great options in Ontario, but we could. Here's what we need to do. First, we need programs and policies which reward how much you reduce greenhouse gas emissions, not how much money you spend. And these programs should push us to move to green energy sources for heating and cooling. Lloyd Alter explains this very well in his book, Living the 1.5 Degree Lifestyle. Secondly, we need to consider project lifetime costs for any demolition application. Anyone wanting to demolish a building must show it's better for the environment to tear it down and replace it with the new building they're proposing. And you can take into account the number of people who will be living in the new structure, the per capita emissions cost, if you like. This is not impossible. We have the tools to do this. Our own Canadian Athena Institute developed the eco-calculator, which tallies life cycle costs for building components back in the 1990s. And the newer tool is just a couple of years old, the Carbon Avoided Retrofit Estimator. And it looks at the net benefit, emissions-wise, of retrofitting an existing building or replacing it. But probably the most important thing we can do is carbon budgeting. So a carbon budget tallies up how much more carbon the planet can emit before hitting the climate crisis point, and then divides that up among all the countries and cities of the world. So we need to be measuring each new big development project against this budget. How much carbon will it put into the atmosphere? Can we afford it on our carbon budget? Carbon budgeting is a lot to contemplate, but it's not impossible. Municipalities are used to long-term financial planning, as well as a future-oriented municipal asset planning now required by the province. And as mentioned before, we have tools to help us come up with these costs. And other municipalities are doing this. We can learn from them. Thank you.